Hi. Okay. I just noticed that there's this turnaround button. That's what is on the outside of on the other side. That's a mirror there. Wait, that I'm behind my little desky thing. And outside. Okay, yeah, enough of that. So, yeah, I'm getting close to the end of this history. But it's probably not going to be today. Maybe. We'll see. Okay, so here we go. Paragouna was but 5 miles away from Parowan, and Watson had contracted to teach school there that winter. Yeah, so remember how Claire had just died? It was in September when he died, that incident. His son, Claire, like 13-year-old boy, almost 14. So anyway, we'll see what happens here. But that's interesting to like kind of put it into context there, that he had contracted to teach school there that winter in Paragouna. It was a small school needing only 2 teachers. Watson was the principal of the school and taught the upper grades. His oldest daughter, Vivian, taught the lower grades. Vivian was too young to draw pay since she would not be 18 until the following February. So her father, the principal, drew it for her. In January of 1890, Emily's little boy, Lorenzo, took sick with what seemed to be and was later diagnosed membranous croup. When he became worse, he asked for Mommy on this side, Pearlie on that side, and the little one, Aura, by Mommy. That was in quotes. Okay, so Pearlie is rural Pearl, and she's their nanny type, let's see, big sister type. Okay. He seemed to know he was dying. He died January 24th, 1890. This was twice Emily had been called upon to lose a child, and her children to her were real jewels. This was the 3rd death in Watson's family. But yeah, those 2 boys real close. I don't know how old Lorenzo was, but so he's teaching, I guess, school. And then yeah, now we'll skip it on to the summer. In the late summer of this year, when Alma returned from the Armstrong Ranch in Braffit's Canyon, she said to her mother, "Father seems to be so worried. He has twice talked about near the mountains all alone, and that is unusual." The mother replied that when he was worried, he usually went to the mountains to pray. Later, we learned that he had been called on a mission to the southern states. Father realized that his families were in great need of him. For years, he had either been in prison or dodging the U.S. Marshals. All this time, his families had been self-sustaining and had endured many hardships. His wife, Emily, was expecting again. His health would not be improved in the South, and he still suffered a great deal with malaria, so he had asked the Lord for guidance. Father informed the church authorities of his situation, but told them he would go if they still wished him to. However, they felt that this present with his present problems, it would be wiser for him to wait and go at some later date. They wrote him an honorable release. So anyway, I'm going to kind of interject here that apparently, I mean, I don't know if people could see him in action when people got asked to go on missions, but I don't know. I mean, nowadays we do and see, like, get recommended and stuff. But he like put on a good happy face, even though he was sick and had, I mean, serious mourning in their family and the weight of providing. Okay. The pressure on polygamists in Utah was so severe that Watson felt, in spite of the fact that he had spent 2 terms in the penitentiary, he would still be hunted. He began to look around for some place to move his families to. He considered Mexico, but found that he could take but one family there. It seemed inevitable that he would have to move one family away from Parowan, and he felt that he should find a place just far enough away that he could get to either family without too long a delay or too much trouble. He finally decided upon Muddy Valley, the country around Bunkerville, Nevada. He went to Pioche, Nevada, the county seat, and obtained a certificate to teach school. Then he moved Emily and family to St. Thomas, where he taught school that year. Pearl and Aura were 2 of his students that winter. Pearl, Lissy's girl, was still living with Emily to help her. Lissy stayed in Parowan. She had Vivian, 18, Alma, 16, Claire had been killed the year before, Zola, 11, Millard, 9, Lizzie, 7, Clark, 6, Bertha, 4, and Myrtle, 1.5. During this time, she took in sewing to help support the family. The older girls did whatever they could to help out. Vivian taught school. Alma assisted relatives in their homes. The younger children helped around the house and yard, but still the responsibility was Lissy's. School closed early in the warm, muddy valley. It was March. Watson had found there was no medical help in St. Thomas, and, as Emily was expecting, moved his family to Panica, where he understood he could get assistance. Watson hired an Indian to drive the wagon while he, Watson, drove the buggy with Emily. The children were divided between the 2 conveyances. The Indian squaw thought her husband was leaving her, so she tagged along behind, crying and wailing. The Indian stopped 3 or 4 times and tried to explain to his wife, saying he was going to get money for this trip. He was not leaving her. His horse was tied behind the wagon, and he tried to explain that as soon as he reached Panica, he could ride back. But the squaw kept up her frantic sobbing until her husband had to go back with her. Then it was that Watson had to take the wagon and have Emily drive the team in the buggy. George Lyman is going to say something about this, but I want to tell you that George Lyman, I believe this is the George Lyman that marries Rural Pearl, Watson's daughter, and my great-grandmother. So George Lyman is my great-grandfather. Okay, George Lyman told me that Emily had never driven a team before this, so it must have been a terrifying experience, especially in the condition she was. I'm assuming the condition of being pregnant. Ora tells me she well remembers this trip. The children were wide-eyed as they crossed the muddy river, and the horses plunged in. One of the mares had a little colt running alongside, and when it reached the main part of the stream, it disappeared. It must have gone down in quicksand, which is characteristic of this river. They had started very early in time to make the trip in the daylight hours, but the Indian affair had delayed them so much that it was long after dark before they reached Panica. When the baby was being born, the midwife, Mariah Rice, having imbibed too freely, had trouble in handling the forceps. They kept slipping off the baby's head. Watson had to assist with the delivery in order to ensure the lives of Emily and the baby. The little girl, had a large blood blister on the top of her head for over a month. She was named Alice, Nevada, because of the state they were in. She has always gone by the name of Nevada. Watson discovered there were many opportunities for work in the mining business. The team he had while here were splendid horses, Maud S. and Midnight. And occasionally he would take a trip to Parowan. In the spring of 1891, he took Pearl and Ralph to Parowan to stay the summer with Lissy, which is Pearl's mom. And so sometimes that gets confusing. And took back with him Alma and Lizzie. While in Panica, Lizzie and Ora were invited to a birthday party. Father inquired about the dresses they would wear and found that Lizzie's dress was quite worn. So he purchased a piece of flowered lawn, cut and sewed a blouse and skirt, which were pretty indeed. Watson was extremely handy with a needle, as well as good with a sewing machine. I myself have seen very few people who could darn a sock equal to the ones he darned. Although Emily had some very trying experiences that she always remembered while in Nevada, it proved to be a sanctuary for her, and she spent 2 very enjoyable years there. Vivian, Watson's oldest child, obtained a teaching position in Clover Valley, now Berkeley, Lincoln County, Nevada. She taught all 8 grades and received $50 a month for her labors. Many of the pupils were almost as old as she was, and one boy was older. She was a splendid teacher and liked the teaching so much that she obtained a school in Panica the next year. One day, word was received that Lissy was very ill, and it was serious enough that Watson wanted to go to her as fast as he could. He hitched up his fine team of horses and started for Parowan. He went as fast as he could. He felt the horses could travel and not injure them, planning to hire a fresh team when he arrived in Pinto. For some unknown reason, there was no team there, no team for hire when he arrived there. He rested the horses for a short time and then resumed his journey. He went through from Panica to Parowan in one day, making an average of 7 miles per hour, a distance of 100 miles. Quite a remarkable feat for a team and buggy in those days with the roads they had to encounter. Lissy had been flowing so badly that they feared for her life. The midwives were unable to help her in any way. This continued for 5 more years. Because of this condition, she was required to stay in bed. As Vivian was teaching school, the parents decided that Alma would have to give up her school and take care of her mother and the children. She had had 1 year in high school, so that this ended her formal schooling for that period of her life. Watson returned to Panica, and that spring of 1893, he moved Emily and the family back to Parowan. Vivian's school finished a short time. Okay, wait, we're in mid-sentence, but I'm going to show you these pictures. Certificate of admission. I think that one is, it's certificate of admission. I kind of think it's for Vivian, but I don't know. Her teaching type certificate thing, but anyway, we'll figure that one out later. And this says L.D. Watson, Vivian, and other teachers. So Watson's sitting there in the middle, and Vivian, I can recognize her if I look back at her other pictures. Oh, wait, there might be one up here. Yeah, I think there's another one back here. Sorry, I should have got this. Okay, so Vivian is this one, his oldest daughter of all his kids. So I don't know which one she is. Okay, so she's in there. And maybe that's in Family Search and they have everybody's name on it, but I don't see any names there. Alright, and this one, I've showed this one before too, but it's, because I skipped ahead, I think I showed it one time somewhere. Yeah, that's his family with a lot of the children. Let's see. So this one is Watson, Lorenzo Dow, and this one is Lissy, and this one, okay, I'm careful. Yeah, that one is Emily, and so these are all the kids. Not all, because some boys have died. Yeah. Yeah, this is, I don't know when, but it looks like that Lorenzo, the little boy who got sick, that was one of Emily's children, and Claire, the one that was in the accident. So, yeah, I think it falls in this time frame of when, yeah. Okay, more pictures. Even we're in mid-sentence. But you can see those girls. And, wait, let me see this. Yeah, they're all, I think those are just all some of the older girls. And this one are all the children that Emily raised to like adulthood and such, because her oldest girl died like when she was 3 or so, and then that little boy, Lorenzo. But anyway, there's 7. The 7 children Emily raised. Okay, let me get back to that sentence. Sorry. Vivian's school finished a short time after this, so her father returned to Panica for her. She was infatuated with a young man by the name of Will Kane, a brilliant young man, but he was not of her faith, and her father felt that it would not make for a happy marriage. He decided to take Vivian away and find some interest to help her forget this fellow. It was the time of the dedication of the Salt Lake Temple, so Father took Vivian to Salt Lake. Such a wonderful trip. Vivian was amazed at the number of people her father knew, and the dedication was something to remember all her life. Following are 2 letters written by Watson to his loved ones in Maine. As you will note, they were written from Nevada, but they tell of his health. He never complained at home. Panica, Lincoln, Nevada, February 5th, 1893. Dear Sister Clara, rest assured, I was glad to hear from you. I have been sick most of this winter. In fact, my health is not good, nor has it been for years. My family are all well. My oldest daughter, Vivian, is teaching school here this winter. Now, I do not know much about my father and mother's relatives. I would like to get the names of all as far as I can, the living and the dead, but I have not been able to so far. I have never heard from Daniel since he was in Kansas. And that's the end of the quotes. It was the custom in the early days of Parowan to have the males, the priesthood at church, sit on one side of the building and their families on the other side. Because most of the children of these Watson families were girls, the parents felt that it would be best for the family, wives and children, to go with the father and husband so he could assist in caring for the young ones during the meetings. Okay, the water, like this kind of is cool to me. They used, like, when Jesus instituted the sacrament, he had this cup, just one cup, and they would pass it around to everybody. And that's, I guess, the best, what they thought was the right thing to do. That's what they did. And nowadays, I mean, especially with the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic, I mean, we wear masks to church and sit like far apart from each other and like row. There's a row in between the people in front of us, and so I mean it's so different, just different. And then now for me the deacon passing the sacrament doesn't even let go of the tray. He holds it the whole time for everybody. You don't pass a tray to one person's hand to another person's hand, and everything. Anyway, so you take a little cup that has the bread in it, and then he goes by, and you take off your mask and eat the bread, and then put your mask back on, and then another person comes by with a tray to put the cup back. Just toss the cup. And then the same thing with the water. So it's interesting that I read this kind of in the middle of us taking so many precautions. to be germ, bacteria type free. And okay, here we go. They're at church. Men on one side, women on the other side. Women probably with all the babies. The water for sacrament was passed in a large pewter goblet. Each person took a small sip as it was passed to him, and then passed it on to the next person. The goblet was rather tall and had a handle on each side. It was difficult for a child to handle, especially if it had just been filled with water. When the goblet was emptied, it was filled from a large silver pitcher, beautiful in shape and design. Because the children needed assistance, Watson felt all should sit together as a family unit. Accordingly, the Watson family all sat together on the male side of the congregation during all the meetings. This continued, and one Sunday the bishop stood up and announced that he and his counselors had decided it was best to have families sit together, but that he, the bishop, wanted it understood that they did not appreciate those who had done it before being given permission by the bishopric. I remember Father, upon his return from church, telling the mothers about it. He said, "It took them a long while to find out what was best, and they did not have fortitude enough to tell me I was annoying them." Okay, there was something I was thinking of. Okay. Actually, like, that he went home and remember upon returning from church telling the mothers about it. I think that it might also have been a tradition that someone stayed home to keep dinner going, or I don't know. But it could be that they were just talking on the way home about it, and that everybody went to church. But I remember it being like something that the prophet back in time had said, that everybody should go to church, and not to leave like the oldest daughter or someone at home to take care of getting the meal ready. And that's when they started saying, meals need to be really like prepared the day before, and or simple. Yeah. At one time he asked to dinner B.H. Roberts, who had come to Parowan for conference. He had rainbow trout from Penguich Lake, and Brother Roberts was very fond of fish. He said this was the best fish he had ever eaten, and asked about the lake from which it came. Father described the country with the love of an outdoorsman that he was, and so it was decided that Brother Roberts should see the place for himself. Early the next morning the horses were hitched up. We had a beautiful span of horses, Kinrain and Midnight. Father took me along with him and B.H. Roberts, and what a glorious day it was. It was fall, and the mountains were glorious. Even the horses enjoyed the trip. At the lake we did not go fishing, for that would have taken more time than Brother Roberts had to spare, but we purchased some fish, and these were given to Brother Roberts. Okay, I'm going to stop there, but I remembered what I was going to say. Is that somewhere, yeah, okay, you know, all those pictures I just showed. From before the pictures was the state penitentiary up there in the section, and nowhere in here does it, just after the pictures that I showed, you know, these pictures, then the next page up there, it says his closing years. So yeah, she must have realized that she wasn't talking anymore about the state penitentiary. But yeah, so cool. Okay, that's it. Okay, that's it. More tomorrow. All right, bye.